welcome everybody to Town Hall 130. It's Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. And yeah, let's get this show on the road. Let's jump to the next slide there. My name is John Best. I'm the CEO and founder of Best Innovation Group. I've been in credit unions for a long time. We do a lot of stuff for credit unions. Lately, it's been a lot of mergers and other custom coding. We also do a lot with innovation, which we'll talk about in a few. We started this during the pandemic, and it continues here 5 years later. So we're proud of that. And the person who started with me was Mike Lawson, who was just fantastic to agree to this. Sometimes he's here, sometimes he's not, but he's always a blessing to the industry, and we're thankful to have him. And then my other partner, which is the next slide, I believe, because he gets his own full slide.
I hope not.
Oh, I hope so. That'll make me happy.
I don't. Glenn told me to take it off, so I don't put it on there anymore.
What?
Thank you, Madison.
Fine.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, hang on. I bet I have it somewhere.
Oh.
Bring it up. All right, I won't bring it up. Anyway, so for those of you that don't know, Glenn actually has been with me since day one of me trying anything public in terms of speaking. And so I started a podcast before it was uncool to be a podcaster, which was 2014. And Glenn immediately said, look, I would love to work with you on this. And we've been partners in crime in that model ever since.
We were uncool already. It just wasn't uncool to be.
Yeah, it was just not. It wasn't uncool to be uncool at that point. But very exciting. And Glenn and I, we have, I guess, I want to say we're probably approaching 500, 600, 700 episodes out there. It's been out there a long, long time, going on 11 years. And we're very fortunate because Glenn Glenn and I think complement each other nicely. I'm also going to start calling Lou for when he shows up we're going to call him our, what do we want to call him? Member, host at large. That's what we'll call him. He comes and goes, but he has just been such a tremendous boon to the town hall that I want to acknowledge him as well and the help that he does for us. So anyways, let's talk about our sponsors here. America's Credit Union, which is kind of going to be a lot about what this show's about. We're very excited to have America's Credit Unions as our sponsor. I've been working with them for as long as they've been around, both of them, the two entities separate and now the entities together. And what's coming up next week is their signature event of the year, which at this point is going to be very important given what's going on. And I think Glenn has a good take on that. So I'll let Glenn speak to that.
Well, we'll get back into it after we do the rest of the sponsors, but I can't wait to see how they thread the needle. I mean, there are just
and I'm curious myself, so I'm going to let you run that. So, hey, has fraud been creeping up on you, Glenn? I had some fraud.
You know it.
I tell you the fraud. You want to hear the fraud I fell for like an idiot?
Oh no!
I'm traveling back and forth between here and Tennessee all the time, and I dropped. And I actually think I have an example of it. I'm gonna see if I can bring it up real fast. It came in today. And it was what it is it's a fast track thing. So it looks like this. I'm gonna actually show it because I get them all the time. I just fell for one because I'm not very smart. So I don't normally fall for these, but I fell for this one because what it is it's the fraud on this one is if you drive a lot, you know they're always like doing your tolls, and it says we'll find you, and they do find you by your license plate. One way or another, they will find you. They're very good at it. They should be in charge of finding people because they're excellent at it. So, and they've got what looks like could be a real thing, although this one's less than the one I hit. But you could see that when you go here, and I'll just bring it up real fast.
I don't know. Easy Drive, Massachusetts. That sounds fairly convincing.
Yeah, well, that one, the one I got was it was me coming through where was it? Somewhere else. But you can see it's down now because they don't leave it up very long. But anyways, if you had opened that, what would have happened is it would have taken you in, it would have said, hey, you owe a very small amount, like $5. Like what would be a toll? It's pretty smart, and then they push it through, they get your debit, but then they start asking for your PIN, and that's when it gets that's when I canceled it, realized it, froze the card, and called the credit union and got a new one. So, but just so you know that, this is the kind of stuff that once they get a hold of it, there are people I know that actually use the debit card as a way to confirm people at their credit union. What's your debit card number? What are the last four digits of your debit card number? I've heard credit unions using that as a way to validate your identity. So, well, you know what's better than doing that, Glenn?
It
If
occurs
you
to
could bring
me.
up, yeah, she is.
I was going to say, it occurs to me, I got one of those that was even a little bit more sophisticated because I'm thinking that it noticed my area code and my phone number and actually said that it was coming from the Georgia Peach Pass, which is exactly what is used in Georgia for the express toll lanes. So
Yeah, the one I got was
I
from
didn't think, well, you'd been traveling, so you'd hit multiple states, but
yeah, the
I
one I
didn't
got
think
was
I'd
the
been,
toll
I
that's
didn't
between Kansas and Kansas City.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd been using it. And then sure enough, I didn't click through. There was some other telltale, but as we all know, people are getting better and better writing these things through AI enhancements. So they get
Yeah.
through all the time.
Well, and my point was they asked for my debit card and then they wanted the PIN, which I was like, you don't need my PIN. That's okay. Something's wrong here. That's when I woke up because I was tired. I was like, wait, what? Oh, good looking site, but no, that's not it. English was all good. Assume it was built with AI. You can build an entire site in about 2 seconds using AI these days. But the fact that they used the last four of the debit made me think because the other day I got asked by somebody what the last four of my credit card were as a way of validating me, and these people would have it, as would a lot of other people. So just curious. But the better way to do this is using something biometric, and Luma's been right at the front of that. They've been pushing hard into that area. They continue to work on things like evading voice cloning, which by the way is just going to get better and better. So if you haven't, you need to check it out. Also, it's super fast. Depending on what you want to do and the comfort level of the operator or the member service rep, it's a lot of questions. What's your secret password that you made with us in 2007? What's your, can you tell me an address you had before this? Blah, blah, blah. And I get it because, you're trying to get a new card or whatever, but having something like this is just going to make it a lot easier. And then with that, you would pair it up with Typhone's new payments platform, which they're getting ready to announce a big deal about that. They're going to come on and talk about it soon. But that's generally where that extra validation comes in. Glenn, is when you're trying to move big money somewhere, $2,000-3,000, $15,000. That's not a wire or is a wire. And pairing these two things together is going to really ease some customer service and make it a lot easier to deal with credit unions, particularly if you're trying to move money between accounts. So if you haven't checked them out,
I thought it was really cool. They also, when they are now a QSO, and when they got their QSO funded, they actually took in the incoming funding, the investment from the credit union through the FedNow network. So they actually had and it was it was a big enough investment that it maxed out the transaction limit that you could do. So they actually had to do a couple of them. So I think they actually, well, unfortunately for FedNow, it was enough to actually alter their average transaction size for a period of time because frankly the volumes aren't that great yet.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting because you still don't have clear view into people's ACH process. You can surmise that if you schedule an online ACH and you get it before one of the drop times, for real time, that it'll happen, but you can't be sure. You just can't be sure. So Typhone's going to help with that because what it'll do is it'll tell you. So you're sure. You know when it's going to go. And that is really important. So important that I think you should work with them. So give them a call. All right, let's move along here. I think we're going to talk about the Innovation Club. I'm going to be quick about this for those of you. And if you're interested in talking about this more, I will be with Glenn at GAC. Glenn's with me at every Innovation Club now. We're happy to meet with you, talk about it. David, you know what? I'm going to let David do it. David, you look like you're bored. Tell us about the Innovation Club.
First,
and why you keep coming.
Well, the Innovation Club is great. I mean, in my particular case, representing Desert Financial, I'm probably one of the odd people out in the group because there are a lot of extremely smart individuals there talking about advanced technology and the implications of that advanced technology on us in the years to come. So from my perspective, it's a breath of fresh air because it provides me a glimpse into what's coming, and it could be processing speed, it could be AI engines. It could be all kinds of different things. So that's my short take on it. How'd I do,
Yeah,
John?
I think you're dead on, and I think that one, you're not giving yourself enough credit. Because people like David are able to take what we talk about, and we're looking for those 10-year curve type things, which funny because no, so far nothing that we've predicted that would be that far out has actually been that far out, huh, David? I don't know if you saw the recent Microsoft release on quantum, but we'll be going over that in a future episode, certainly talking about it at
Sure.
there. We also did a deep dive just recently on DeepSeek, far deeper than what we did here on why it's so effective and what they did, the mixture of experts and things like that. So, and David certainly is one of those people that can take my techno garbage jargon and turn it into, well, this is what it looks like and how it impacts customer service. So it's as much as our members as it is me, and I'm thankful to have them. So thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks too. I'll add another plug in here too. The session we had on fraud and the fintechs that you brought in, Dark Watch, what have you. Again, take us out of our traditional comfort zone and give us exposure to areas and in a forum to talk about some of the challenging aspects associated with fraud. So again, hats off to you, John, and the Innovation Club. It's time well spent for sure.
Yeah, well, we're just the group is fantastic. So we'd love to have you if you're interested. We do have a little vetting process. You have to pass David's IQ test. It's not super hard, but you can get through it. So that's it for the IC. Take a picture of that, talk to Melissa, send a pigeon. Glenn, I'll let you update everybody on Big Go.
Yes. Well, actually, we can probably skirt over this pretty quickly. If you haven't already signed up for a bingo card, please do. It's a lot of fun. It doesn't cost anything, and you by being on this call and being on the distribution for the for our town hall, you qualify. And I see that Madison's just put the link in there. We are basically tracking over the course of the year a series of predictions, some frivolous, some rather serious, and seeing who actually winds up with most of them on their card. But a lot of these are the kind of things that I hope we're going to be talking about at GAC. So I think the two of these kind of come together. Can you go to the next slide? We'll just really quickly, Madison, kind of remind people. I can't recall which ones were since our last call. There were 5 AI ads for the Super Bowl. There were 4 different companies, but Google actually had 2 unique ones. So that's on there. We now have had not 1, but 2 new CFPB directors, actually 3, if you count the one that's currently waiting for senatorial approval. If you can go to the next slide, I think there might be one other new one that we've announced. Well, again, this is going to be front and center, I have to believe, at GAC, the battle over credit union tax exempt status. I mean, talk about something that is about as big a deal as we can deal with. And the CFPB whiplash, we're seeing, the overdraft fee was rescinded, the rule around the $5 maximum. And basically the CFPB is still in mothballs right now. So we've got all kinds of things going on there. My personal belief is we should continue to behave as if it never really changed, because again, if by the definition of whiplash, it's probably going to change yet again. So why keep adjusting your practices when you don't need to right now? So this is just a quick snapshot of the things we're tracking. And when you go out to that link, you will generate a card that will have a random selection of the 75 or so items that we've come up with. And we'll follow along as the year goes on.
No one's got bingo yet, though, right?
Oh, no, we're not even close. Not even close.
I got 32 cards. So,
and another one, I mean, a couple of these, well, a couple of things. Well, Venmo is, I think, maybe getting a little closer to establishing direct merchant connections based on some new, they're pushing their new updated app, and they talk about all kinds of exciting enhancements. I've seen them talk more about paying bills on there. So don't be surprised if that one happens. And you're not going to like this one, John, but another one that we're getting close to is, I'm guessing people have seen the price of Bitcoin has come down dramatically over the course of the last week or so. So one of the things we had was Bitcoin dropping back to 75,000. It's still sitting, I think, at about 87, but it's more than halfway down from where it had been. So that's another one we'll be watching out for. And just like NVIDIA, once it fell 10%, even though it's gone back up and basically recouped everything, we still check that one off the list because it actually did have that 10% decline around DeepSeek. So I think that gets us to our main attraction. If you can go to the next slide. And again, we're calling it pre-gaming. If people wouldn't mind putting into the chat, how many of us are actually going to be there? Lou, I know you're attending. Can anybody else, if you're planning on being at GAC, can you just let us know? Here we go, Sarah, Paul. Oh, Paul's there even earlier. Great, we got several folks. As I said before, too, I really think that this will be just as valuable for the people who are not going, and maybe even more valuable for the people who are not going, because what we'd like to do is just say, okay, well, what are the big hot topics right now that we hope to hear addressed? And if they're not organically brought up, let's both do two things. One, we'll serve as the eyes and ears so that we can bring back any information on these topics, and we can try to force them to the table too, to the extent that those come up. I think the next slide, I was pretty impressed. Oh, wow, Sarah.
Oh, hey, wait.
Karaoke.
Sarah says there's a karaoke contest.
Well,
What day is that?
March 2nd.
So that's Sunday?
Sunday, yeah, 7 till whenever they close.
Hey, look, Paul's here. Hey, Paul.
And we're also doing a karaoke, doing a karaoke for kids fundraiser. So karaoke for kids idol. The best singer or whoever gets the most votes is gonna
America's
win,
top credit union singer. Is that what we're here doing?
Is that you? Is that you, John?
I could be America's top credit union rapper, white rapper. I don't know.
Ah.
I'll have to put some effort in. I believe David Lindner would give me some stiff competition. I know Paul would, but
Where is the karaoke, Sarah?
It's a
yeah,
place
why don't you
called,
put the deets in the thing there?
I'll put the link in there. Yeah, you guys started talking about GAC. I was like, oh yeah, I could just tell them about that.
Great. Yeah, that's the more we have an opportunity, and maybe we even start if people are on WhatsApp, we can have a WhatsApp thread for this group to make sure that we have a chance to communicate and convene. But one of the things I'm pretty excited about, it looks to me, I don't know if everybody else had the same impression, it seems like the agenda has shifted a little bit more toward breakout sessions and what I would call deep dives on a lot of topics. And because there are so many really hot topics, I think there's 4 different times that breakout sessions are being held. I am having a hard time choosing because there's so many good ones. And I think we've got a few of those on the next slide. So I'm kind of curious. It kind of reinforces again the greatest hits of the types of things we're looking at right now. There it is.
Well, before we get going though, right off the bat, I saw a DEI like day one. There's a DEI conference. I'm just curious. And no politics either way here. I'm just curious of how many Canadians are still engaged in DEI and how many have abandoned it. If you want to put any information or heard anything, or had nothing, I guess, if you want to put it in the chat. I'm just wondering.
I believe that's one of the roundtables on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. But I had the same reaction. In fact, I just came from an event here in Atlanta earlier today, and people were saying, and this was more broadly around conferences, there was supposed to be a women's conference in Las Vegas, rather. I don't know if it was specific to fintech or tech more broadly, and they were supposed to be meeting in May. That's pretty short notice. They just canceled the thing because they had too many sponsors that got cold feet. So I was frankly kind of gratified that we still have one on the agenda here. But again, that's where I'm talking about threading the needle, because I think that, particularly when we're at a situation where we want to make sure that we have a voice at the table with regard to the new administration, that's an interesting balancing act too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering. All right, so let's talk about these.
Well, speaking of which, I mean, the second bullet, I mean, like I say, this has got to be the number one topic, I would think. Don't tax my credit union, messaging and strategy. As people wind up hiking the hill, this is supposedly back on the chopping block, potentially. We've got a I'm forgetting exactly the individual roles, but there's somebody who actually talks about, in no uncertain terms, making community banking great again in a position of power. The ICBA was invited to the House offsite retreat as they were planning how they were going about the budget. America's Credit Unions was not. As one of my colleagues in government affairs once said, and has said recently, if you don't have a seat at the table, you're probably on the menu. So this could be the most serious threat that we've had to our tax status in, at least in my memory, I think. So I think those are some of the things we're going to be talking about. Hot topics in compliance, regulatory updates. Of course, there's a lot of that going on. If I'm not mistaken, I believe the NCUA is having a board meeting today, or if not tomorrow. So we'll have information around that, hopefully, as well. One of my favorites is tomorrow, sir. Thank you. The economic update is always one of my favorites. Mike Schenk and his team from CUNA. That's the one that I'll be at in this session, in this breakout group. So I love other people who jump in, particularly on the road to open banking and implementation. That's another one that I'm really curious that, we went down the path of Section 1033, the rule was finalized, et cetera. And now, we've seen other rules kind of get mothballed. I haven't heard anything about what's going to happen with open banking. The credit unions, just by virtue of our size, don't have quite as tight of time frames. So it's a little bit like having a term paper due in 4 weeks. You probably won't touch it for another 2.5 weeks at an absolute best. But I'm curious to see if that actually gets walked back, or it doesn't immediately sound to me like it would be contradictory to the kind of the philosophy of the current administration, particularly with regard to enabling non-banks. So I would not assume that it goes away, but we shall see. So that'll be an interesting one to be watching.
I wonder what Global Perspectives is, because rumor is that some of these cuts have hurt the World Council.
Oh, it's beyond a rumor. I don't want to use too strong a word, but I will. I think they're decimated. I saw one statistic, I think it was CU Today or the CU Times that reported it, that the developmental grants that they actually issued in other countries, particularly Ukraine, which hurts my heart, about, I think it was 97 or 98% of them came from USAID, whose budget is now gone. And the World Council laid off half of their people pretty much instantaneously because, frankly, they have nothing to do. So, wow. Not a pretty story. I mean, it's one of those kind of unintended, I shouldn't say unintended consequences, but kind of unforeseen connections that wind up creating collateral damage that, people may say, oh, we didn't know about that one.
So I just wonder how that colors that discussion.
I agree. And I mean, it'll be interesting. I don't know when these topics were chosen and whether that was, whether that was already on the agenda before the whole USAID thing popped up, or if this is very timely as far as a rapid response to that. I was also interested to see we got digital assets and crypto back on the agenda. I mean, it's kind of gone quiet the last few years, but look at that, the title, Protecting Community Wealth or Withering Away as Money Evolves. And this is another one where, credit unions had been in the vanguard and kind of got burned in the process. So it'll be interesting to see as this kind of gets back into favor, will credit unions jump back into it, or are they going to kind of hold back a little bit this time around? So that's another one I'd be very curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I think I want to do smiling faces to AI interfaces to I feel like there's a third rhyme there, very Dr. Seussian, if I could come up with it, but my head isn't in the game as well as it could be today. But I'm curious about that. I will announce, if we do the What's Up thing. Also, I'm going to be, and we're going to be sending this out before the conference. I have just about finished setting up the Blue Sky. So for those of you that don't know what Blue Sky is, it's basically a replacement for Twitter, but it's an open source platform. And what it means is we can have our own server as credit unions. So I'm setting one up, and I'll encourage you guys to make accounts on there, and that'll be a good place to keep up as well. And I will post there what things I'm planning on going to. And I'm not above following Glenn into one, just so we both can be there.
That's
So,
one. In fact, John, I think you and I are going to go into a little bit more detail on that tomorrow on a recording for the big cast, which will air next week, so we can get the word out on that one. And if we, to the extent that this is kind of coming out of stealth mode or whatever, we can kind of talk it up while we're out in DC next week as well. Hopefully, I mean, that's a more the merrier kind of thing to build the community. Correct?
I would agree.
Are there others on the call? Anything? But again, whether you are or are not coming, there specific topics? And there's another page because there's 2 more breakout session timings. Which of these topics kind of jump out at you as the ones that you'd be the most interested in hearing more about? And I'll hold the second half of the question once you see the second slide. Are there topics that are not being covered among these breakouts that you think we really ought to be spending more time on as well?
Yeah, I'm curious to what people think as well. I think just real quick, hey Paul, what do you? I'm always curious. For those of you that don't know Paul Fiore, Paul is we are in the presence of greatness. Paul is the original founder of what became Digital Insight and had the foresight to see the internet and has had been involved in lots of other innovative things that he stays behind the scenes these days, and you don't hear as much from him. But Paul, what are you thinking while you're there? You got something in mind? Yeah, OG everything. I think that's a
Thank
great
you,
way to put it,
John.
Rob.
I appreciate that. Yeah, the thing that out to me was lack of something about innovation. At the end of the day, it's about every 10 to 20 years that some major new product comes out, right? You look at co-op for shared branching, an industry-wide approach, something important, something that helps us level the playing field. And in the old days, new product innovation either came from regulations, credit unions are allowed to offer share draft accounts, and then every vendor, offers the ability to offer share draft accounts. Or it could come from a competition. A bank offers home equity lines of credit and the credit union only has second mortgages. The turnaround time to address that competition is almost instant. But
Yeah.
today, the competition isn't the bank and it's not like regulatory allowance. It's really fintech. So Zelle came out and it was 17 years later that Zelle came out after PayPal, right? So 17 years is a long time to address something as simple as P2P payments to pay your piano teacher, right? So for me, how do you take advantage of all the strengths of a credit unions to collaborate and work together to bring something important and new to the market, and how hard it is to innovate, how hard it is for companies to break into the credit union space?
I had not thought about that. That's kind of phenomenal. 17 years.
And so many credit unions still aren't on it. Like, my lawn guy wants me to pay him via Zelle. I don't have an institution other than Wells Fargo that'll do it, and I refuse to use Wells Fargo. The only reason I have a Wells Fargo account is to keep an eye on them. So I think Paul makes a very good point. And when I tried to use what Suncoast had in place, he basically told me, no. was his response in so many words. So lately I've been paying the neighbor so that the neighbor via Venmo, it's an indirect way of doing it, but it's working for me because that's how I found him in the first place.
That's pretty kludgy. But it's funny. I just put out a blog kind of comparing all the quote unquote faster payment volumes that were reported by the various providers at the end of 24. Zelle announced that they actually moved over $1 trillion in money over the course of the last year, which I thought was pretty remarkable. That's a pretty impressive number, kind of press release worthy number. Same day ACH, which is not instant, but is faster, is actually knocking it out of the park compared to the other ones. And then you've got FedNow and RTP. The other thing that Zelle pointed out, though, just kind of your point about paying the lawnmower and whatnot, John, is they took a bow for how much more traction they've gotten. I think they mentioned something like 500 million payments involving small businesses, and their definition was the small business might be receiving the payment or might be on the the payor end. And again, sounds good, but then I looked a little more closely. I'm like, I wasn't that impressed by that, because it actually means that only 1 in 7 of their transactions has a small business. They said small business. I mean, I'm thinking it's probably just business, period, on one side of the transaction. That's good, but it doesn't strike me as amazing. I mean, I use Zelle almost exclusively to pay small businesses. I pay my landscaper with it. I pay my personal trainer with it too. I mean, those are two transactions I make on a regular basis, and everything else is kind of very random and episodic.
Okay, we don't need you to be dropping names about your personal trainer, and you pay your dog groomsman and your what else do you have? Your caviar taster. You probably pay him or
Oh,
her.
my shameless plug. There's a blog out there. Actually, Madison, if you could put the link in. I thought there was some pretty interesting insights, particularly with just the insane degree of a head start RTP's got on FedNow, which is kind of sad because FedNow actually has more financial institutions, particularly credit unions, actually implemented, but they're not the ones that are driving the volume. They're the little guys. So that's a little bit challenging. When you talk about, I think you make a great point, Paul, too, on innovation. And I would like to think that maybe it's kind of baked into some of these topics, although I don't see any that jump out at me as saying, oh, that's where it's going to be covered. But last week, again, you talked about the secondary loan market too. Loan NFT, Laurent Black's blockchain initiative, tried to build a secondary loan market that he worked through the Filene Research Institute. We talked to him. That's something that's in the works as well. So that should be interesting.
Yeah, actually, I went out to Chicago to DePaul for that. It's very interesting.
Yeah, he will not be at the GAC. I'm not sure. I think he said the next thing he's going to be at is the Trellens conference. But
Yeah, my son works for him.
If you're a Filene member, the report's out there behind the member wall.
So yeah, I think that I think Paul makes a good point. And so, Paul, is there anything in particular you're looking to advocate to get there, or are you just
Yeah,
coming
I'd
to
love
sort
to
of
get
listen
your
in?
opinion on something that we've never mentioned to anyone outside, but if you truly reinvented the vendor selection process, so let's say there's a new category, right? So right now, I've been thinking and working hard on evaluating the category of wealth technology. So basically, asset class investing. So a member wants to buy Bitcoin or wants to buy uh, stocks or wants to buy fractional real estate or invest, or it could just be basic financial planning tools, budgeting, maximizing their 401k, their ESOP, getting out of or consolidating debt, or it could be new services. David mentioned he was Desert Financial. I believe they launched a program for offering wills and trusts, similar to how Rocket Mortgage and different providers institutionalized and brought down a very complicated process of applying for a mortgage or doing your finances. And credit are now offering estate planning, wills and trust services, right? And making a tremendous amount of money doing it. So that's an example of something that every big bank in America already has, a self-directed investment and wealth planning suite of services, because all the big banks made an acquisition. Bank of America bought, Merrill Lynch, and Chase bought JP Morgan. So every big bank partnered up and found the partner to be able to offer a full suite of services. But as a credit industry, we really don't have investment products. We have savings products, but no investment products. So the concept is, what if you, instead of one vendor coming in and offering a buy, sell, hold for crypto, and another vendor for stock, and another vendor for fractional real estate, another vendor for wills and trust, another vendor for estate planning or financial planning or budgeting tools or debt consolidation. What if as an industry came together and stole the page from the SaaS consumer model of seat licenses, where we purchased a seat license for 100 credit unions, right? Formed a QSO around it so that we would go out and essentially, you go to a vendor that would normally charge $3,000 or $4,000 a month for a service that they offer. They will do it for $500 or $600 a month if they could get 100 credits all at once. So the credit becomes like a consortium buy for a group seat license at a pre-negotiated lower cost, but only for services that generate revenue back to the credit unit, right? So in the case of will and trust, credits, once you get to about 1% penetration of your membership, a 60,000 member credit union could make about $300,000 to $400,000 a year net profit by offering legal services using all the latest tools that are available. But you could do that for all the services, right? You get an asset under management fee if your members do fractional real estate, or you could get a commission fee if your members buy crypto, trading fee if they buy stock. So if, as a group, the credits came together to make the purchase structured around a QSO, you could combine 4, 5, 6, 7 services around the same topic, meaning wealth tech. Very similar to what happened at PSU in the early days of the 70s, where they started with underwriting issues.
And also U.S. Central Bank was attempting to do that with bill pay. Same model, right? By ORCC. What you seem to be suggesting, which I think there could be validity, because I've always said that the superpower of the Crayons is collaboration is basically to either acquire or create your own Robin Hood.
Yep.
Am I
Yeah.
off on that? Because
No,
I
it's
mean, that's
exactly
what
it.
Robin Hood kind of brings to the table, right? They're now allowing 401ks. There was just a really good I forget who had it on there. It was I think it was Hard Fork. They had the CEO of Robin Hood on there. Um and you know, the CEO was talking, they were kind of hitting him pretty hard about, hey, do you feel like you're allowing people to sort of gamble, right? And I know from my days of working with the investment side in the Canadian space that like when you worked with Pershing or any of the big clearinghouses, there was a lot of rules around that, Paul. So I think
Yeah,
your point is well taken because I think each individual Canadian is having to navigate those rules directly. I throw
sure.
this at David a little bit, but I remember David's, we went so far as in one of my Canadians, we had to have two separate televisions in the queue line because you couldn't mix the advertising because we had like screens that were in the queue line in the branches that were showing the various things we would do, and we could not put the investment stuff in there. So the bright idea was to get a second screen and just run it on that.
Yeah.
I
No,
mean,
you're right.
that seems to be that's just so crazy to hear. But go ahead, Paul.
No, that's exactly the disclaimers and disclosures to separate the shared insured versus the at-risk investments. But the point is that the banks have figured that out, right? I think the consumer knows if you invest in stock market or real estate, your capital is at risk and it's not FDIC insured. And I think credit unions got there with their RIA broker-dealer relationships for the wealthy investors. But what happened is, instead of serving the 3% of the members with over $50,000 in their savings, you're serving the 97% of members that just want basic tips of how to get started investing. What are the, how do I get out of debt? All the basic things to get the member to the point where they are trying to grow and amass wealth. But the challenge is there are companies, let's say you talked about the Robinhood or the Betterment or the eToro. There are companies that have it. The problem is each one has to get started, get a pilot, do an integration to a digital banking or core
Yeah,
vendor,
yeah, there
go to
isn't sort of a
market.
quick way to get going, like
Yeah.
what you were talking about happened with the original mindset of PSCU, which was you had a similar problem that you had to surmount for credit cards back in the 70s because main institutions. No, I think that's very interesting. I think so are you planning, do you see any of these breakouts as being an area to bring this up, like grassroots or are there areas here? Because just looking through this, can we go back one slide just to see? I'm just looking through at what.
The CEO executive forum could be one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, certainly, I think you've identified a very good point here, Paul. That there, it feels like you know, it feels like this almost needs a NAQSO kind of um breakout to say, hey, given what's going on, because I would also argue, Paul, that the same can be said of AI, with what's going on with AI, because uh, it really is going to have to, I think there's a QSO there for sure that really does need to be developed. Actually, I've been talking to some really big Koreans about that recently. And that QSO, because of the nature of the training and the specialized data and the lack of resources, I think in your point, so in mine, it's about talent and technology. I think in yours, it's about regulation and implementation. But each of those can be overcome with a larger entity that could validate all of those things and bring it to bear and have what you need. I mean, it's the same way corporates got involved with being an ODFI on behalf of credit unions that cannot do ACH. So it does seem like there's a gap there for all these services. And what's more interesting is it feels like they are cropping up faster than ever. You go in and there's just sort of a new thing out there. Um, I when I went into Robinhood lately, I was just out there. It had like four new things in it I hadn't seen before. Um, the crypto, a couple other things that I was just blown away by that I did not think would be an area that they could get into. And it feels like they're just pushing forward into that space in a way that, like I said, really surprised me um, long term. So I'm just looking now. but that's kind of what you're suggesting, right? Sort of a Robinhood sort of interface of stocks and EFTs. Retirement would be
Yep.
another one, right? Because a lot of people in this gig-based economy are looking for a place for retirement as well, and they don't have those services. And a great example is, Lamont's firing up this new company that Glenn mentioned, and it's going to take him time to get some of these things in place where a lot of people in the startups, when they bring these people in, and Paul, I'm sure you're used to this, they have their own versions of this. They're like, yeah, I don't need your insurance. They've become sort of um, self-reliant with regard to those sorts of things because they recognize the status, and they've done that through a financial institution that brings them those services, so that they don't have to worry about it, so they can go and work at the places they want.
Yep.
And bring that to bear. So yeah, I think
There's
it's
also a vendor
fascinating.
selection problem. If you go to a trade show, Money 2020 GAC, you're gonna walk the booth and you'll find 10 companies that'll give the credit union ability to have a Robinhood-like experience for stock trading, for example, for a self-directed brokerage experience. So the challenge, it's like twofold. Part one is identifying the category, let's say wealth tech or AI, and then part two is doing the vetting and selection. Actually, we're going to be announcing a QSO that was formed with some credit unions in Michigan. Happy to give the website. We haven't, I think it just launched a couple of days ago, but we're going to make our big announcement at GAC.
Yeah, I'll be interested to hear about that. I have a quick question before we move along.
Sure.
Do you, Paul, and people should know I'm kind of personal friends with Paul, so I give him crap all the time. I'm going to ask him something personal here. Do you regret not turning Digital Insight into a QSO as opposed to, the way things kind of played out?
Wow, great question. I've never been asked that, but as part of this process with this new QSO, what we talk about is let's turn it on its head. Instead of having a company that starts off as 100% VC and entrepreneur back, that then maybe forms a QSO and they become 10 or 15 or 20% owned by the QSO. We wanted to, with this new project, it's called See Wealth Next. We want to create a structure where you started with being 100% individual owned company. So the entrepreneur with their VCs and early investors. The project we're doing is if it's related to wealth tech and we pick a company, we put companies that are connected together in the space and we make an equity investment and join the board on behalf of the credit unions. But it has a chance to become like an Origins or Valera, where it's 100% owned by credit union in stages. So from the entrepreneur standpoint, there's a baked-in exit along the way. So maybe when the company is pre-seed, just getting started, no pilots, low valuation, but 20 years later, there's $1 billion in market cap, 100 million in profit, then that business, as new credit unions join the QSO, they're buying at a higher share price, but there's less risk. So every new credit union that comes in owns a piece. So it ends like an Origins, right? But it begins like a Digital Insight.
Yeah, and I think Origins is a great model to look at for that in a way, because it's a better analog than PSU. I don't want to, Paul. I think that there's an opportunity for maybe a side meeting at GAC here. I know I'd like to catch up with you.
Oh, we'd
Why
love
don't
to be
we
here.
we'll get you on the blue sky, and I'll make some plans, and Glenn and I will come find you, and anybody else that wants to join, we'll advertise it, because I think more people. I don't want to hijack this too much. I could talk to you all day. I just haven't spoke to you in a while.
Paul, the name of the QSO is CSSEE Wealth Next. Just spell it out.
Can I put it in the chat, John? Or
Please
Yeah,
do.
of course.
Please do.
Yeah, please do. But I want to let Glenn continue because he.
Yeah, if we can go back to the next slide. I think, as I said, the breakout sessions are kind of the greatest hits that I see. I mean, CFPB and the new administration. Again, did they plan this before?
Ooh,
or after?
interchange a 360-degree view.
Exactly.
Does that include Illinois?
And that story just keeps getting more and more interesting. CU Wealth Next. I got you. Okay. I'm going to write that down before I lose it. So, and the other one that I kind of keep coming back to that I think is really, I don't know what they're going to discuss in the session, but CEO succession planning. I mean, it still seems to me that a disproportionate number of credit union mergers come up because I didn't realize that you can literally look at the NCUA website, and one of the things that is given as a reason for a merger is inability to find a new CEO, which I find disturbing. If that's the reason that we're not continuing with, and if it just really is a shorthand for, hey, we need more size, then it might be a different story. But I find that to be a very troubling situation. So I'm really curious how that one's going to be approached. Again, like you said, John, interchange, an extremely important topic that's going to come up. The future of faster payments. Again, I just talked about FedNow and RTP, where that's going to play out. Litigation trends, always an interesting one. Did you see, this probably ties back to the regulatory one. Apparently, I saw a headline today that Durbin's looking to get the Credit Card Competition Act fired up again. So, yet another, brush
Well,
fire.
and how does that relate to the Hollis, Sanders piece?
Oh, the one with the Holly and the 10% credit card.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about it, they're really two different things, because the Credit Card Competition Act only deals with the transaction fees. This is dealing with the balances after the fact. And then I saw just today, and this one is even more head scratching to me. The state of Virginia is supposedly introducing legislation creating their own state level usury cap of 12%. Now, again,
Do you think any of that could
complexity.
actually fly? You weren't here when I discussed this last time. Do you think any of that could actually? Lou and I were of the opinion that this dies on the vine in Congress because too many of the. I mean, it's a devastating number to all of a sudden.
I think it dies. My personal gut feeling is it dies on the vine. Unfortunately, my gut feeling of a lot of other things that I thought would die on the vine don't seem to be dying on the vine. So I'm not willing to say that.
Interesting.
I mean, some of the things that are going on right now in the early days of the new administration, I thought were beyond the pale. Again, don't want to get political, but certain United Nations votes.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, I was just curious as to something like Interchange 360 was interesting.
Well, the idea that it came up in Virginia, because you've got some pretty big, I mean, Capital One. Capital One is based in Virginia. I mean, a major credit card issuer and clearly a big player in Virginia politics. Now, unless this is somebody just trying to stick a thumb in their eye and it's not going to go anywhere, it's just really hard. And this is another one of those where trying to pull this off on a state level is unbelievably complicated. And I'm assuming, I don't know if that's only for Virginia chartered banks. Is it for any credit card that is applied for by a citizen of Virginia? I mean, I haven't read the details of the bill itself, but the whole thing, you get back to that whole question of when you start doing this stuff at a state level, it gets really, really complicated.
Interesting.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
What's that?
I was just going to say these are the topics, and like I say, I think they've got a pretty good list of what I think of as like the greatest hits of what we need to be dealing with. I'm curious what topics are the most interesting to people, and also what topics that you find interesting that you don't see listed, like Paul says, around innovation, which I think is a great catch. I hadn't really noticed that.
Yeah. Anybody want to speak up? I'll make Lou speak, just because, as I said, he is now host emeritus. Is that a word? I don't know. Something like that. Emeritus. I'll come up with something. But go ahead, Lou.
What am I supposed to speak on?
You were going to talk about interesting stuff from your perspective, not Valera. We're not asking you to speak on that. But interesting what breakouts and where your motivation is this year when you're there.
Yeah,
besides what you have to do.
Either the ones that they actually have identified as breakout topics, or ones that you wish were someplace on the topic list.
I wish that I could attend multiple of these. I guess I can watch the digital replay afterwards. But here's what I plan on attending. Let's see now. The Monday. No. Where's the breakout?
If you scroll back.
Breakout. The Don't Tax Me Bro session. I renamed it that. But that by listening in on the league call yesterday, the league is of Florida, Georgia, Alabama, and now Virginia is one combined league, and my credit union is part of that league. That is the biggest topic. So I need to go to that session. Where's the next breakout? Oh, this is bizarre. The 11 o'clock, there is the future of NCUA or something like that breakout session. and yet nobody from the NCUA is going to be speaking. And at the exact same time, NCUA board member Tanya Atsuka is going to be speaking to our league at 11 o'clock in the our league is kind of headquartered at the Courtyard Marriott. So breakout session on NCUA, NCUA member not at that breakout, and speaking at the exact same time in a different building. That's whatever. I'm really torn. The CFPB session seems like it would be really interesting, but at this point, it's going to be expect the unexpected, or just it's all unknown at this point. There's many different possibilities, so I don't know if that's going to be a great use of time. But
Sarah has a great question on that, Lou.
Well, and Sarah, that's on the bingo card. That was one of the things that there will be at some point another merger of one of the two of the state leagues. And I think that one to me is almost a foregone conclusion. It's just a matter of when and which ones. I didn't see the Virginia one coming last year.
Yeah. Well, and there are a few though that are so strong. I think, and especially I think Michigan would probably fight tooth and nail. But yeah, I think it's like at some point, what's the point?
Oh, and something else I'm looking forward to on Sunday. Visa is sponsoring it, but there is a joint league get together, and they're calling it wait, let me make sure I get it right. The 1934 reception, referring, of course, to
Estes Park.
In 1934, federal FDR signed the Credit Union Act.
Right, and then they all went to Estes Park and met.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because at Suncoast,
yes, I remember that. There's like a picture of
that. They have Claywell's briefcase there, and in it are notes he took from the meeting.
Interesting. Yeah, there's
you say, "Show me Claywell's head." They also have that frozen, I think, on ice.
Interesting. I would love the one session on crypto. I even put in the notes there. The speaker is CEO of St. Cloud FCU. So I assume that credit union is doing something with digital assets. I would like to. I know the GAC is not about technology necessarily, but I would love to see use of blockchain that is going to transform financial services. And I know I've spoken about that on a previous CU town hall. I'd love to see a session and hear the feedback. This probably isn't the right conference for that, though.
Where did you find the speaker list? I saw that the app just came out today. Is it in there?
Yep.
Okay, because I had not seen the names of the speakers.
I've started going through the sessions, like redeciding which breakout I plan on attending.
That's an interesting one that they've actually St. Cloud FCU. I was not aware that there was anybody actively involved in digital assets and crypto other than Becky Reed and the folks down in Texas. But
sure,
that'll be interesting.
Mm-hmm. Very cool.
We didn't mention also protecting members, fraud prevention and advocacy in action. Lou, you and I have discussed this, another piece of news that popped up, which I thought was interesting. At the same time that Zelle is announcing the $1 trillion in value, at first I thought it was a Zelle initiative, but it appears to just be a Chase initiative, where they have now announced that they are going to be restricting. I forget what the word they exactly use. They may delay or even like some payments, decline some payments that appear to have originated from social media. Is the way they're put it. I'm not sure, and that to me is kind of an odd definition. I don't know exactly what the criteria that makes something fall in that category it is. And again, it kind of falls back to the notion of what Zelle's original premise is to pay friends, family, and people and trust. And they're trying to get in front of the fraud issues that they continue to face and the blowback from a PR standpoint too. So the fact that Chase is doing that, I'm going to find interesting to see how that plays out from a customer experience standpoint, and then if other FIs start to follow suit. So I don't know if that's going to be anything they talk about in protecting members. There's a couple of new solutions out there. I know there's actually it was just an announcement about it's also an elder abuse type tool called Careful that I saw. I believe was at Venture Tech was where I came across them. They've just struck a partnership with Synovus to offer kind of scam prevention kind of fraud, people, imposter, people posing online. And again, just last week, a conversation with Scamnetic, which is another interesting solution that I know is just kind of coming out of stealth mode and getting some traction. So that obviously is another hot topic.
Going back to that engaging member, what's the fraud one? Protecting members, fraud protection, and advocacy and action. That is TrueStage, First Mark Credit Union, Beasley Security, America's Credit Union, and somebody from the program office in the NCUA.
Okay, we do have an NCUA person. Good. I haven't seen. Did you notice? Is Kyle Hopman on the agenda? I would assume he would probably be somewhere. I bet he may just show up in one of the general sessions. And I don't think they probably show everybody who's actually going to have a moment at the podium.
I'm looking it up.
While you're doing that, I was curious. Farah from the UN Credit Union was saying a little bit about some EOs impacting their member. You want to speak to that?
Sure. Thank you, John. So we've been trying to keep up with all of the executive orders that have referenced the UN specifically. We are very hypersensitive to them. As you know, there were a lot of UN agencies that were mentioned, 6 specifically, for cutbacks related to just defunding and, similar to what is being done with the government, just trying to trim the fat, I guess you can say.
Mm-hmm.
Bureaucracy. So we've calculated about 8% of our members may potentially be impacted, but not in a detrimental way. We're just waiting to hear what the agencies themselves are going to do should the defunding actually occur from the US. Other entities are looking to supplement what might be a reduction in their funding. So we're just keeping an eye out on it right now.
What that made me think of was, there are a lot of, I used to work with a ton of them, credit unions that are specific towards government service jobs, I'm thinking of, what was the credit union in Washington, D.C. that specifically they had like the Secret Service and a whole bunch of these. I wonder, Doc, if you, Langley, there you go, Sarah. Are you doing any research on that, Sarah? And like, are they doing anything for all these people that are losing their jobs? If it was any other industry, we would, right?
Right. You would, I haven't heard anything about it. And I just actually thought about this a couple of days ago and I'm starting to look into it. But yeah, that'll be something I'll be asking people about at GAC for sure. There are a ton in DC that specifically serve like the partnership, or no, that merged into NASA. But there are a ton that serve specific agencies still.
And I'm thinking we've had Australia Hoover from the CDC Credit Union has joined us on here before and talked another one just down the street from me.
Oh yeah, we should get Australia on. That would be great. If he still exists.
I'll drop him a quick note if he. I haven't spoken to him probably in a good 7-8 months.
And Fed. Yeah, I hear there's some 4-star generals that got a lot of money that may be looking for a place to plant it.
Farah, will you be at GAC, Farah?
No, unfortunately, I won't be able to, but I will definitely be here to hear the highlights. Thank you.
Great. That's a great point that was not on my radar. That's a really good one. If it doesn't come up organically, I will definitely try to find a way to get a little bit of detail on that.
Yeah, I'm curious about it myself. So, okay. Well, this brings us to our time. This was a great meeting as always by Glenn. Glenn, I will work with you to get Blue Sky up and tested before we head out there, and we'll get it out to the masses. Keep watching your emails. We'd love for you to join, and if not, we'll get the WhatsApp piece going. But either way, we'd love to have that happening. I bet Paul wants to sponsor it, so I'll talk to him, and we'll get things rolling. And Rob, you said you were going to be there, right?
Yeah, Rob.
Not sure yet.
Gotcha. And then
are most people on the call? Are you WhatsApp users? Is that a better place? I found that when I went to Money 20, we had better uptake on WhatsApp than we did just in a text thread. Does that work for people? If it's not Blue Sky?
Well, I think we could do both. There's nothing.
Yeah, as long as just checking to see how many people are on WhatsApp. I'll assume that's a yes. We can go from there.
Yep. Okay. Well, we'll just do both. All right. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to join. Thank you, Glenn, for always being so insightful and thoughtful, to share with these things. Thanks to Paul for just being open as he always is whenever I bug him and he just shows up places. I always sort of take advantage of his presence. And Chris, good luck with your conversion. We're always here to help if you need anything. If you get in the throes of it, that's stuff we do at Big. And everyone else, have a great time. And if you see us and you're come to these things, please stop us. A lot of you who are frequent attenders got some gifts from us. Please wear them if you got them. We'd love for you to help us advertise, and we just love to see this medium grow. So
If you
thank
see
you, everyone.
something, say something.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye. See you next week.